Just a quick note before I get on with this rant that we've introduced bundles to the Crow Hill experience, and because Glass Strings is currently on promo discount, these bundles are the cheapest you will be able to get them. If you already own some stuff within the bundles, you will get a special ninja discount. So just add the bundle to your cart and see what discount you get. We weren't meant to call it discount. Ninja number, which will be monetary. Glass Strings is coming off promo in just a few hours, so the bundles will be going to their full price, albeit their full price before you deduct your ninja number. So I did a video recently and got this response.
All TV and film music sounds the same nowadays because there are hardly any real composers doing it.
Right. The problem we have today is we can't agree to disagree if we can't agree what we're talking about, namely what words mean. I've learnt this the hard way. If we agree to converse, to discuss, to come to a point where we can either agree or disagree, we must surely agree on the words. And the words in this instance must be composer and the word real. What is a composer to you, Botty? Sorry, you've got quite a Botty name, as in spam bot, so I'm going to call you Botty. What to you is a composer? When someone sings sweet nothings into your ear, it's not nothing, it's something, but something that maybe has never been, sung before. The first composer we often come across is the voice of our mother singing sweet nothings to us to soothe us. I don't have the footwear for this. Composing, I guess, as I understand it, in its simplest terms, is the creation of music that has not existed before that act of composition. You're compiling a bunch of tones, rhythms, lyrics, beats, pitches, sounds into a form that creates what we know as music. And I guess we could argue what that is. And I would say, take it back to its original form. It's a method of soothing. And in so doing, it's a method of manipulating your emotions into a point of empathy, of feeling something outside that of your own. Which is why composing for film and TV, I mean, say for example where I am here, I know on camera it's not going to look that impressive, but it is just insane where I'm sitting. And it's insane because it's making me feel in awe of the surroundings, of the fact that I'm here in the Hollywood Hills with a Hollywood sign behind me. The reason I would want to put music on this is to help you empathize with that sensation that I'm enjoying, to alter how you feel, to manipulate your emotions. The act of recreation, dramatization, poeticism, and by the humming of a tune. Media composition for me brings all of those arcs together. It can provide you with a sense of empathy that is otherwise not present in front of you, either through the visual stimulation, through the dramatization, or the poeticism in which people are speaking, the dialogue. So I suspect, Botty, that's not what you're saying, because surely if a composer has written something for TV and film, they are a real person at doing that. They have supposedly been paid, or maybe that's what you're talking about, is there's no real composers because we're not paid anymore. But I suspect it isn't, because you write it in the context of it all sounding the same these days. So what for you is a real composer? So composing in its core, if we agree, is coming up with something someone else hasn't hummed before, sung before, a beat someone hasn't drummed before. But part of the act of composition historically has become the art of handing that down. As civilization advanced, as groups of people distanced themselves, so did the need to record, archive, curate these works of art, these compositions. that were only, after all, the way in which air was made to move around our ears? How do you archive that? How do you make a record of it? How do you nurture and protect it? Particularly at a time where such compositions and the effect they could have would be so moving, so profound, that they seemed to be, the composer anyway, nothing more than a vector for the language of God. And so indeed, I believe the monks started jotting that plain song down, recording it for future generations. You know, they do it with ballet. There's a way of scoring ballet, but few choreographers that I know actually have the ability to either write or read, I don't know what the name of it is, ballet scores, where there's little stick figures saying what you should do every... It's 8 beats, isn't it, that dancers count? And then I guess as technology advanced and these amazing instruments popped up, I guess there was a need for composers to be able to communicate with people how to perform their works. These sometimes sacred movement of airwaves. And again, as we spread and culture spreads, there becomes a need to be able to create a way of communicating this with people who have maybe never met the composer. However, I have never seen the connection between the need to be able to write something down or convert an energy source, which is the movement of air, into that of something that can create an image on a piece of paper. I've never seen the connection between that and what it is, in its purest sense, to be a composer. However, I am very much the product of a 20th century snobbery which suggests that you're not a proper composer, you're not a proper musician if you can't read or write music and don't know music theory. I have utmost respect for anyone who does study that, anyone who can read or write music, because for me, my music would sound shit without people who could read it. And bloody hell, do they make it sound great when they do. But is this what you mean, Botty? Are you spouting that kind of late 20th century, well, if you can't read music, you have no future in music? It actually just doesn't make any sense to me. And you must know, if you're not actually a spam bot, you must know that you are going to trigger me, because the whole point behind this YouTube channel and that Crow Hill project is to open up this possibility of allowing people to move airwaves around in a manner in which they desire without the need to have to write it down with some dots and stems and lines. So I'd like to ask the audience, what for you is the definition of a composer? Now, Botty, you did provide a context, and that was that you felt that all music on TV and film sounds the same. You're clearly not watching the same TV and film that I am. And yes, I will agree there's a degree of homogeny, particularly with the kind of fake orchestral stuff that you'll hear on certain types of program. But certainly, if my personal experience is anything to go by, if you're working on something that is a frontline A-list Netflix, Apple, Amazon, ITV, BBC TV series, you are very much, as a general rule, being pushed to create something that doesn't sound like everything else. There is a huge amount of effort that's going into this, and I do think that there's some interesting stuff being developed as a consequence. I do feel that the time for the enormous 300-piece sounding orchestra to underscore someone burning a meringue, I think those days are numbered, thankfully. It's always just been, for me, a little bit over the top. So with the limited context that you've provided, you've suggested that you're talking about film and TV composers not being real composers. Is that real film and TV composers? I don't think you're talking about AI. I don't think we've got to the point where the majority of what we watch on the telly, whether it be streaming or, out of masts, into our telly aerials, is being created by machines. The reason I don't say I'm a music composer is a little bit like, ketchup calls itself tomato ketchup because the biggest ingredient other than water is actually tomatoes, whereas actually for me, the biggest ingredient in what I do in the service I provide isn't actually composition. It's a very, very small slither of what I do. Taking my compositions and creating a master recording that is synchronized with their picture, dialogue, sound effects, and sound design is 99% of my job, of which how you doing? Of which a large amount of that time is devoted to man management, whether that be clients or the people who are working with me to deliver those master recordings. Someone who farms out drum programming, orchestration, arrangements, synth programming, indeed taking a theme and making it into a different cue for a different bit of the film and crediting someone as an additional composer. Is that a lesser composer? Is that not a real film and TV composer? So I guess my second question is, what do you mean by real? Do you mean the quality of the output, that it doesn't somehow satisfy your harmonic taste for, I don't know, stuff that modulates a lot? Or indeed, is it simply the number of chairs that they're able to sit in, whether that be the conductor's seat, the copyist's seat, the arranger, the orchestrator, the programmer? And if so, how many seats warrants a real composer? Or is it the lack of use of, say, real musicians and the implied connotation that without having the ability to communicate with musicians, i.e. through the craft, or indeed, more simply put, the language of notation, does that render you an incomplete, a less than viable, legitimate, real composer? I don't know, for me, when people ask me what I do for a living and I say I compose, they go, oh, so do you play an instrument? I go, well, not really. The thing is, what I've always said is, no, I don't really play a musical instrument. I dabble with the piano, even though I've been learning since I was 5. Just never picked it up, really. Just never got my head around it. Just like I never got my head around notation. It's just, I have a head that's not designed to remember that for some reason. And it is annoying. Which is why, still, when looking at I think it's the bass clef lines, I go, get buggered down Fulham Airport. Now, so what I say when people ask me what I do is, well, I do play the piano a bit, but as they say, if you can't play, teach. And if you can't teach, and I certainly can't do that, compose. For most of us, we start out as composers because for most of us, we don't know how to sing or play or beat other people's compositions. Before we start speaking, we haven't developed the ability to mirror the voice of our mother or father. And it's something that definitely happens within development. They say we can all swim when we're born. I think we can all compose when we're born. And I'm going to give you my definition. The art or act of composition is creation of music that you yourself have never heard before. It doesn't need to be revolutionary. It can be, as I said, sweet nothing. It's times like this I've just suddenly realised I forgot to get travel insurance out. This could be an expensive route down. The reason why I've bothered with this botty is twofold. One, because just like watching a little baby scream his heart out, discover their voice and sing and shout, and that raspberry noise or the wonderful echo that banging something on a table makes, that joy shouldn't leave us. And something that I really saw happen during lockdown, certainly with the bits that I've been involved with, the One Orchestra, the BBC thing with Spitfire and Labs, and hopefully now Volts and the rest of the Crow Hill project, is the idea that composing can come first, all of the learning can come second. That in fact, as John Lennon said, if you really want to create something new, if you have writer's block, pick up an instrument you can't play. You're more likely to play something you've not heard before. The very sight of a musical instrument, whether it be a keyboard or a drum stick or a violin or a flute, the very thought of that for most people when they see one of those is, I don't know how to play that. If I had an ambition with Crow Hill, is to create an art shop. Art shops exist to sell paints and pencils and crayons and paper and spray and glue and all sorts of good, yummy stuff. Yes, I do have a stationery and art shop fetish, massive one. The idea is to sell that to people who like drawing and painting. And when I buy crayons and paints and paper and all of the lovely stuff that makes a total mess of my kitchen for my kids, I don't go, okay, now we must sit down, study some art history, and then work on your draftsmanship for a couple of years, get the 10,000 hours in, and work you towards doing a still life or painting this landscape. No, we all know that it's about encouraging people to create something from their imagination. I don't know why that stops at music, why music has been hijacked by this snobbery, I guess, born of, if you're going to put 10,000 hours plus in 8 hours a day learning how to play the cello, you're going to be protective over that craft form. But most musicians are more generous these days and understand that expressing yourself through being able to perform a musical instrument virtuosically is one thing. Being able to express yourself by humming a song of your own creation is another. And as samples allow these days to be able to lose yourself into a sonic world of your creation, well, it can only be for good. So I'm saying there is no such thing as a real composer because we're all composers. I guess just some of us have arrested that, and I think that's a terrible shame. And I would just say to anyone, if you've never picked up a musical instrument in your life, just have a go. You will not believe the escapism, the amazing time-soaked Wizard of Oz journeys you'll take yourself on, and how that form of expression, whether it be through, I was on the way up here, I was listening to Snakes of Russia, and I'm not very good at expressing anger, but fuck me, did that music get through my father's death. Because part of grief is anger, and I could live it through his music and try and recreate that music, because back to the first principle, it's about manipulating emotion so you can empathize or think outside of yourself. And by climbing inside your own emotions, by expressing yourself through composition, whether it's by playing an instrument you've ever used before, a sound you've ever played before, a tune you've ever heard before, what you are doing is you're reaching inside to how you feel and you're getting it out. So people can understand if you choose to play them that stuff, but also so it has been expressed. And I think, I'm no psychologist, but I think that's probably a good thing. Botty, I send this rant with love, because in this day and age, we don't disagree enough. People cower away from saying what they feel. People cower away from saying that they disagree. I think what we first need to do is agree on what the words mean. And I suspect what you're implying by your question, I will agree to disagree with, but welcome anyone with differing views that may be somewhat controversial. I would really, really relish a retort from you on what you think of what I've said here today, and indeed what other people think determines a composer, a real media composer, a film and TV composer that's real. If you haven't subscribed yet, there's plenty of really exciting stuff coming up, so please do, and leave... What am I saying? And do remember to ding the bell to be notified the next time we put up a video. There really is some exciting stuff coming up, particularly for Christmas, which will hopefully have you lost creating worlds and compositions of your own. One of those, if you can see it, thummy, always much appreciated. Lots of love, and thanks as always for the sustenance and inspiration of an annoying comment to make me go for a walk in the Hollywood Hills.